Good evening, friends, and welcome to this webinar. Um, we have with us Ashish, who's going to be leading this session today for us. So, the topic of our webinar today is about decisive leadership. And Ashish, being an expert in leadership development and coaching, will help us take us through this session and give us his perspective in this webinar and his experiences he'll share with us. Uh, During the course of the webinar, if you have any questions, you can please keep posting it. At the end of the session, we'll try and answer them. Uh, I'm sure Ashish has a very interactive way of interacting with his participants. So I'm sure he'll keep the chat box open for you. So at the panel, you'll see the chat box available for you to respond to him. So let's put Ashish on the stage now and let Ashish begin. And Procademy is very happy to have Ashish to conduct this session with us. And I'm sure it will be a great value add session to all of you. So Ashish, over to you, my friend, and let's get going.
Thanks, Aggie. Thanks as always. Is my voice coming through? Fine.
Yes, very clear, very clear.
All right. So good evening, everyone, and I hope that you've had a great day. It's right in the middle of the week, so I'm sure you did accomplish a lot that you had planned for the week, and I hope that there is lots more that you will do as you go forward. So, decisive leadership, and that's the topic that we have for today. So what are some of the decisions that all of you made today? And you could, either use the chat or otherwise. Some decisions. What were some of the big decisions? Which decisions did you make? Did you even think of something which you were not doing earlier? Each one of you could even retrospect on this, or you could share your details with me, your decisions. Or did you make a life-changing decision for yourself? Which could be something as simple as that from today, I have decided that I am going to quit smoking, or I am going to start eating healthy, or I will stop fighting with my spouse, or stop being angry at my children. So we made some of those decisions, and all of you would have made quite a few today. Some of those which you might have done and made since morning. You did get up, and you actually might have been in the bed thinking, well, should I, shouldn't I? Should I go for the workout or not? I think one of the bigger ones is, should I have a bath right now or should I have a bath later on? Okay, so Wilfred says on the other side that, decision that you had to take was about salary cut for employees today. I can imagine that is a very tough one. It's a sad one, but that's also a big one. And that's a reality that we have, all of us. Some of you might still have been wondering, should I use shampoo this morning or can I just let it be? Okay, so I have another one, which is a decision taken that I will start reading. That's more like a plan than a decision. But yeah, it should come through as you go along. And thanks, Kalpesh, for sharing that part. Breakfast, was that an easy one? What to have for breakfast? And many a times, if your spouse is the one who's doing most of the breakfast duty, he or she will turn around and ask you, what do you want for breakfast? I think that's a real tough one for us to make. Maybe what you'll have for dinner and who to call. But one decision which you definitely took and which I can also share. Yes, and I think Ajay is right there. Ajay made that comment and I've got that coming up next. One decision you made was to attend this leadership webinar. Attend this leadership webinar on decisive leadership. And I welcome you all. So where does the decision making start and what does it mean? In the real world, we need to decide. Pick something. It is not about a choice between doing this or that. It's about an action. Okay, it's about committing myself to acting on something. The difficult thing is about that choice. I think that's what most of us are afraid of. Whether it is in personal life or whether it is in our official capacity, business world or professional life, what we have to make choices. As one of my most wonderful friends, Anup Godbole, says, life is all about choices. So just make one and get on with it. Okay. So decision is all about the reality, which is the choices. So how we will go through the next about 45 minutes to an hour is about, we'll talk about 4 dimensions. We'll look at being decisive. What does that really mean? Um, Decisive leadership. Understand uh, the the whole context that we've got right now. Uh, some methods, some ways of actually developing our own decisive leadership, and some watch outs. While it sounds great, it is the buzzword, it is used very often, but just get a context. So we'll keep it to these 4 areas. Some of it will be my interpretations and understandings. So please feel free to drop in your chats or your thoughts on this. So decisive. So what does decisive mean? As per the dictionary, it is about making decisions and doing so quickly and confidently. Confidence and quick is the operative word. That's the decisive part of it. And a lot of it is about the like the statements are putting in there. You need to be more decisive, a decisive reply. So it is an action verb in one sense. Some of the things that are related to the decision making. The decision making is a skill, a process, it's an approach, and it is related to doing. And if I actually look at decisiveness, that's in the mind. I am decisive or not? Do I demonstrate the capability? So it is being, it is a mix of both the mind and the skill or doing. And it is about me being who I am. And that's what this decisiveness is all about. It's about the ability to decide with speed and clarity. That's the decisiveness. And actually, the decisions that we make, the strength of those decisions allow us the ability to act. And the reason I'm sharing all of this with you is we will keep this as the context for us as we go through the discussion in the next about 45 minutes, like I said. So it is both a skill that you can build, and it is both an internal state that you can cultivate. So it's a mix of both these areas. Uh, so in the real world, there's a situation for all of you, and this is something where I need you to use the chat box as well. So a player folds a hand, and later that player realizes that they would have won. As the game unfolded, they realized they would have won. So please feel free to use the chat box. So was it a good decision or a bad decision? They thought they had the cards, but they didn't realize it. It's only later that they felt that they would have won. So is it a good decision or a bad decision? Yeah. So you can send your messages on the chat. Yeah. Bad. Okay. Manikanandan says it is bad. What else? Who else feels it is bad? Good or bad decision? All right. So bad. Again, there is another bad. There are too many bads out there, right? Oh, so everybody feels it was a lousy decision. We'll need to unfold the cards and the chances taken. All right. So there's a decisions to be made on number. That's what Vineet says. It's a good decision. Good in that situation. Okay. The decisions are decisions, and they are in a context text. Yes. So Sharat says in retro it is bad. Okay, but at that time it was good. So was this person decisive? That's my second question. So do you feel the person was decisive? And you could have, if you've made a decision on a certain basis, you stand by it. So in the real world, the decisions are based, and I think Sharat said that, and I think Vineet also said that, and a few others. In the real world, the decisions are based on incomplete informations. Most often than not, we only make the best possible decision. There is no certainty that things will happen the way that we want them to happen. So all we could do is gather the right kind of information, make sure that we get ample information, and make the decision. With that context, I will start looking at what is decisive leadership. And that's the topic of discussion today. And let's put that in framework. We've looked at personal decisions. We are looked at in the social contexts, or in the entertainment or in an informal life. But in a formal life, in a professional life, there is an element called decisive leadership. And it will be good to define what decisive leadership is. But this is the reality which exists for all of us. Wherever we are, we have to do bigger, we have to do better, faster, and more with less. And given the current scenario, in what has happened in the world in the last about 3-4 months, this is all the more pertinent. There are things to be done, there are decisions to be made, there are things to be improved, but the resources are a crunch. And Wilfred just mentioned about what he had to go through. So there is a challenge that we are all going through. Hence, this ability to be decisive becomes a critical and a crucial part. So the best leaders are the ones that make the best decisions. So you agree or do not agree with it? You can use the chat box and let your thoughts be around. The best leaders are the ones that make the best decisions. Yes, no, yes. Okay, yeah. So Manikanandan feels no. There are quite a few no's here. All right. I don't think so. I think so. Everybody is saying no. Yep. I think not always. So who makes the best decisions then? Okay. Organizations need decisions. So there are decisions that the decisions which leaders make, some of them are good or bad. In retrospect, we can turn around and say this was the best or not so best. But the outcomes in the organizations are more driven around a particular decision taken. Okay, people are more interested in how a decision was made. It is definitely not true that the best leaders make the best decisions. It is the people who make decisions are more important. Okay, best is subsequent. The first is that whole paralysis of not doing anything, and that needs to be overcome. So good, better, best, when in any context, whether it is in the real life, in our world, in social context or otherwise, as they say, you will always find somebody who's one up on you, always one better than you, always something which is something which is doing some things better than you. So being a decisive leader is about making decisions. And I think, as many of you sent to the chat as well, there are no good choices. There are choices. And especially in the areas when there are gray areas, risky situations, there is unclear, there totally a lack of clarity is there. Everything is going topsy-turvy. That is where the decisiveness comes in, and that is where decisive leader comes into action. So some aspects of decisive leadership, it is about structuring a dialogue at times and arriving at logical consensus. Now, we are not talking about how much time does it take to build that logical consensus, but it is about arriving at that logical consensus. If decisions are made, sometimes it may actually people expect you to convey the rationale as well. And possibly, depending on where we are or what's the situation, the leader might have to facilitate. While generally it is believed that it is about making quick decisions. So the classical interpretation on a decisive leadership is that it is making quick decisions, but not necessarily at that. The expectations of the teams are, and as many of you put down in the chat as well, is to give decisions. So think about this. Many times, each one of you, within today or yesterday or the last 1 month, you would have, if you're working and you are actually involved with the organization, you might have asked some people, can you tell me with clarity what needs to be done? I'm not very clear. Can you take a decision on this? So what people expect, or what all of us expect, is a decision. And that is where the decisive leadership comes into play. Obviously, it's about courage when everything is uncertain. Courage because we are not too sure what the outcomes are going to be. So it is also about defining actionables and actions, and not just getting into that trap of inertia of no activity, but action, any active action. We will talk about the merits of each one of them, but I'm just putting the context right here. So it is people also, we all expect that don't delay or avoid the decisions, but go ahead. So in tough situations and risky situations, it is not about making the perfect decision, but it is about making a decision. So being a decisive leader is about making choices, making a decision in situations which are unclear, confusing, and create action, create movement, create momentum. The need for a decisive relationship, actually the leadership, we can look at all the three angles. Organization, I mean, obviously there are business priority alignments. They want it to be from core value connect as well, and they want things to be moved. There is a direction. There is a clarity. Uh, there is something what I call as a stagnation fatigue. And how do we kill this? The stagnation fatigue will come in when people will go into too much of analysis and paralysis. To kill that, it is important to have a decision. uh, Team synergy, harmony. We know that there are, when you work with diverse teams, there are egos that people have. At times, people actually, flare up for no reason. Why people are not cooperating, we don't know, and things get stalled. So, decision making or decisive leadership helps moving this as well. Obviously, it is about personal equity. We all know how we feel about people or managers or leaders whom we worked with who have always stalled or not taken a decision. We've had mixed reactions to them, and we have very strong mixed reactions to them. Plus, making quick decisions or showing decisive leadership also makes us a sharper professional. We can see the big picture, we can relate to many other things. So, with the background that we have, there is the context of decisive leadership. It is about making decisions quickly, making them effectively, in ambiguity, in uncertainty, in risk, and converting whatever energy is there into action. But is it possible for us to develop decisive leadership? There are some opportunities that we look at. So I think, and I'd like to take an example which is true for all of us right here. So there is this unpleasant message that you need to pass to somebody, and you can pick somebody in your family life or in your social life or in your professional life, and that message has to be passed on. Now, it's a very simple decision. So I will go and talk to them. Some of you would be wondering, what is the big deal? That is very straightforwardly done. But there would have been times in your lives when you really struggled to take that decision, struggled to move on and talk to them. And I'm talking of that being only one example. Sometimes even purchasing something, which product to buy, which brand to buy, which movie to watch, which seat to take, all right, which flight to book if you are traveling, okay? It could also be which strategy to implement at work. So some of us have a tendency to deliberate a lot on these things. And the three buckets which make the difference are mind, knowledge, and skill. So what is there in the mind? The human tendency is to play safe. We all feel that there is too much at stake. The other element is there is tons of self-doubt. I don't think I can do that. I've never done it before. What if I go wrong? Am I making the right decision? And those are the thoughts which come to our mind. Oh, if I get a better deal, and like I was telling you that poker example, the cards game, am I doing the right thing by backing off? Some of you would have actually gone and been to casinos, and you would have realized, is it the right time to walk off or should I stick around? And that's a decision. Am I making the right decision? The mind is playing that games with us. And mind also starts talking to us about everything and anything that can go wrong. It could also be the thing does not exist, but we will still feel, oh, this is a possibility. Now, this is too much of the mind taking over. What is the knowledge part of it? I feel that a bigger issue is knowing too much. The decision is not taken because we are calculating the probability, we are too academic, we are too thorough in our detailing, and we have got so much of information that now the challenge is, what is going to be the right decision? So the fight is from making this giant wheel move to, I want to move it in the best possible manner. So overcoming the mind and making the decision, then you get into a kind of a knowledge trap. And then finally comes the skill. And I think the biggest challenge is what I call as everybody has, to some extent, an advanced level of skill of procrastination. And I call it the advanced level because we will find 1001 reasons, and all of us are there. I stand by it myself. Some of us would be blessed and you haven't had that experience, and I really wish you well, and keep that spirit up. But majority of the people have that challenge. We don't know how to research, how to get more details. And I think the bigger one is also about getting multiple views, create a buy-in, and collaborating. That gives confidence to what we have thought of, or gives more weightage to what we have in our mind. So starting from the thoughts to what we know, from a mind trap to a knowledge trap, it actually comes down to doing trap. With these challenges, there are the biggest one that I personally feel, and the big challenge that you have as a starting point is the bubble. The bubble is there in the mind. So as we have to take those decisions, or we have to show decisiveness in situations, uh, the bubble tells us, no, this is not possible. In the current situation that we have, in the flux that we have, the biggest challenge that organizations today have is, even if you are in a green or an orange zone, to open or not to open. And then once you've decided that, who comes when, what are the phases, even if the, is it going to be the right approach or not. And the mind at times tells us, listen, I don't think that is the right way, I don't think that is the right way, you should probably be looking at something else. So the bubble needs a clearance, the bubble needs to be cleared, and that's one big story that we need to look at. The how. So obviously there is a way of developing this ourselves, and becoming more decisive in terms of our leadership. Simple steps, I've tried to enumerate them here. Manage your thoughts. Avoid thinking that others make a decision which is better than you. One of my managers used to say that, clear the smoke. So if you are looking at the ice cream, then think about the ice cream only. And that's the big thing. The mind starts working well, then the decision making or decisive leadership becomes a lot easier. The intent has to be strong as well. Even if the mind is there, if I am not very clear, or I don't want to do stuff, nobody can force me to do it. Okay, even if we expect, and even if the world expects us to do it, if it doesn't come from within, that's the second part. The third, I feel, is many a times we lose the picture, the big and wider view picture, and that's the decisiveness. The wider view helps us to look at the decisiveness. The fourth is the main area. So everywhere and anywhere, there is, what the proverbial machli ki aankh, the eye of the fish is very much available everywhere. So, I mean, if I was to look at these four things, and I was to correlate it to what has happened during this entire scenario of lockdown and how the government of India is taking decisions, I guess somewhere there was a clarity of thought into that in the initial stages, and subsequently, that we want to save lives. And now that saving those lives could have been a function of a crumbling healthcare system, or we will not be able to take care of the load that we have, or there could be a much more collateral damage that we have, or we have the advantage of being slightly late in this entire thing, and we know what has happened to the world. But there's a very clear understanding, and that was the first part, which is there. The bigger picture, or the wider view, was what else can happen. So I think the approach was from a very, very different level. The next is prioritize what needs immediate attention, and what might and what is something that we need to figure out a little later. I've just used the headphones. I hope I am clearly audible right now. Okay. And the last is the bicycle principle. So if we look at the cricket analogy and of batsman and a bowler, and that's how they become very decisive. And it's also true for you and I when we've taken decisions which are which are mission critical, or even the decisions which we've made in terms of, so the decision of joining an organization. We very clearly, and when we made a choices of our own job and where do we want to join, we would have had an option to join a particular company which you are in right now or not. Who do you want to pick up for a job? Very clear thoughts on what do you want. You can make the right choices. What is a big picture that you want to address, and prioritizing. The bicycle principle, what I say is, rather than looking at everything coming together in a perfect manner, but when we ride a bicycle, we wobble a bit and we get onto it. And then as we start moving, we are able to steer it better.
So if we know the general direction, we start getting control. But if we don't move at all, there is nothing which is changing. So as a leader, it becomes crucial, and people also expect us to get going. As things get going, your direction will come through. A general direction is fine. The specific steps will also go there. But bicycle principle tells us that once you start rolling, once you start moving, it is a lot easier to make some adjustments and some changes as we go along. So that is one aspect of the how of decisive leadership. There are also some other tools which enable us to become more decisive. I put 5 of these here, and some of them would be okay with that, relating to that steps as well. The first one, so these are reflective urgency, the data threshold, embrace uncertainty, engaging stakeholders, and decisions, right or wrong. So, reflective urgency. What reflective urgency means is have a good idea of priorities, what resources, what is needed, get a sense of big picture. It's also looking at what is required at the near term and what is the long term impact of that. Um, I think this reflective urgency also allows us to focus on one important priority area or the most important priority area. And many a times, you and I would have realized that it's even when you are probably preparing a presentation, or when you are probably making a proposal, sometimes we spend so much of time just formatting, and that might not be the priority, and we are not able to move ahead with it. So it is about picking up the right element, looking at what needs fixing immediately, what is the mission critical, the what is a critical activity there. The second is the data threshold, and this is a very interesting element. So each of us like to now, in the world that we live in, it is AI, ML, and so many things are happening. There are tons of information and tons of data that has started coming to our way. And because of this huge amount of data and information that we have, there are times when we actually get there are times that we actually get totally disconnected with the information, and trying to look at large volumes of data creates different levels of problems for us, and the hunger to get more of information and data is increased. Unfortunately, that leads to a different kind of challenge. So it is good for each one of us to identify in any given situation what is that personal data threshold that you have. Are you okay to work with 60%, 50%, 70%, 80%? So, for example, if you've just decided 4 of you to go for a movie, you might work with, and you don't know what movies are playing. So, you might actually go with 30, 40% of information as well. But in a situation that we are in as a nation, and we are looking at, how do we go through this COVID scenario, our information requirement or our data requirement could be much higher. Keeping it 80% would actually create a lot of challenge, because it is easier to get about 60-70% information, but it is really, really difficult to get anything beyond that. And we know that after a while, that marginal increase is difficult. So it is helpful to have a personal data threshold, which allows us enough information to utilize our experience and make the decisions. The next is the uncertainty. I think the last few months have actually told us that nothing is uncertain. Nothing is certain. The outcomes are certain only after the action is taken. So no point in fretting and fuming over what will be it like. But the decisions have to be made basis available information, and live with it, because the decisions have been made. Uh, One of the good ways to do this is also to trust our own GPS. I mean, our own, system, our own intuition, experience, the background of our overexposure. It helps us to make certain decisions and embrace that uncertainty. Those days are long gone. I think they never were, when life was so certain. Today, everything is totally, the outcomes are so fluid and so uncertain, and interpretations are very, very different. So engaging the stakeholders, we hear this very, very often. And I feel that this is one of a major part, but not only to get a buy-in, I think that's a good element, But engaging stakeholders also gives confidence in the decisions on whatever we are making. We could get perspectives, and that's a quick way of getting multiple people to rally with you on the same information. Overplaying it is a big no. I think there is always identification of time when we move from collaboration to action, because getting too many people. So and one of the organizations where I worked, the whole game was about getting consensus, and you reached across to people who were totally unrelated functions sitting in some other corner of the world, but they seem to have a very long connection with the project that you are doing, which might, their contributions or that impact to them might come in the next 3 to 4 years. As a culture in our organization, it was important that we reach to each of those stakeholders, each one of those stakeholders sitting in whichever corner or howsoever minuscule their contribution might be. Now, that stalls the process, that delays everything. And many a times by the time the decisions are taken, the problem is over, or some other solution has been developed, or there has been enough damage and there is something new to take care of. So stakeholder engagement, getting the buy-in, but not taking that too wrong. Wrong decision, right decision, as we said earlier, it is a matter of hindsight. But remember, the outcomes are rarely permanent. Outcomes can always, they stay for a while. When you do the corrective action, it becomes better. But if we kill ourselves over having made a wrong decision, and that will be taking too much away from our decisive leadership capability. But the wrong decisions can always be fixed. But indecisiveness and the impact of indecisiveness on the organization, on personal credibility, on the teams is huge. So while there are steps in which we can actually build our capability, I think here are some of the tools that we can actually use to enable ourselves to become more decisive leader. Reflective urgency, data threshold, embrace uncertainty, stakeholders, and don't kill yourself on wrong decisions. So we look at is the decisive decision leadership the only way? Is that the best way? Is it most successful way? While it works well, and I think in an organizations, most of the organizations are so driven by the Western world, especially by the impact that we've had from America, that we tend to actually look at anything which is not decisive is frowned upon and looked upon in a very different manner. But there are definitely some watch outs. And if too much of everything is bad, and we know that for sure, with us being the diabetes capital, we know that too much of everything is bad. So what are some of the watch outs for decisive leadership? The chances are that if we are too decisive and decisive at every stage, we develop a shoot first mentality. Just go and do it. The focus is on deciding something, which could be anything. Now, the challenge there is that we might have resulting problems which we would have not seen, and those resulting problems actually get compounded. And because we don't ask any questions, or we don't let people contribute, there is too much of damage which is done. And the whole idea is just get going. All kind of activity doesn't mean much. I mean, unless it actually is something is productive and it is sustainable as well. The second is, I think the challenge is between acting and thinking. Acting versus thinking. And acting here means is just do things fast. So decisiveness in a classical definition is let's do it with speed, and anything which is related to evaluation or assessment or looking at alternatives or consequences, that's a waste of time. And that could develop as a tendency in the teams, in the organizations, in the individuals. And many a times you and I would have felt there were some decisions taken and we end up dealing with the consequences. Somebody decides in a haste, wants to do something in a certain manner, and they take their decision and walk off, and the operating person has that challenge. It could be in terms of decisions around announcing bonuses, talking about downsizing organizations. It could be realigning strategies. It could also be launching new products or new businesses. And we would have seen that in some organizations, especially which are promoter driven organizations, it's very easy to make those, to demonstrate decisive leadership, and those decisions also change very quickly. The people are left to fend for those decisions later on, and they end up paying a huge amount of emotional price for that. The other challenge that can come out from there is that since it is speed, uh, and it is about announcing the decisions, there is a chance that data is ignored. Where the decisive leadership works brilliantly when there is a predefined outcome. So we read this quite a lot. A new CEO has come in and the organization is restructured. Now, quite a few times, the organizations have already decided what needs to be done. And the CEO or the new manager or the new leader is more a medium to get those decisions announced and get them moving. So there's not too much of thought to go around it. They can add their own flavor. But many a times, resizing, restructuring, disbanding teams, disbanding groups, and quite a few of them are at times unpleasant. And that's where the things happen, and they may not be the best for the organization. And in short or medium term, it might work out well, but over a longer period in time, it might impact the organizational growth and sustainability. The other big thing is the ego that can come out. If there is too much of decisive leadership, there is chances that we all become egoistic, and that whole thing about no questions, don't even question me. And even if questions are concerned, they are dealt with insensitivity. Uh, the, the leaders might tend to become too full of themselves. The world that we live in, the divergent views might get squashed, and the collective group performance gets diminished. In the situation that we are in, anywhere where quick decisions are taken, and I know one of the excuses that you end up hearing from people is, well, I am supposed to make decisions to move things, to make things happen, to make the organization work, and there are business objectives to be met. But every business or every organization has very clearly these two very key elements which are there, which is one is the business side of the entire story, and another is the people side of the entire story. The task and the people, the process and the people. So while some of these decisions do wonderfully well for the business or the task to be accomplished, in the world that we are living in, the people's sensitivity, if that is not taken care of, the challenges are very, very different. So, for example, currently, while we might think of laying off people, but at tomorrow when we need people, there is no likelihood that we will get people of same caliber. We might decide to fire people because they are not good, but the talent pool is only as much as we have. We might get better people, we might not get better people. So that sensitivity, the relationships with individuals might get dented because people are. So what is fast decisions is good or the best or the right decisions. The decisive leaders are not hesitant, they're daring, brave, uh, and they'll just take the decisions, right? But how about the other side of it? And while we're talking of decisive leadership, there is a deliberative decision making and leadership as well. And what is that about? It is about being calm, making it intentional and slow to act. So, a decisive and not impulsive is the way forward. It's about people first, always, because those are the ones which make things happen. Um, there are times when we have to take unpleasant ones, and we spoke about that. But as long as the general interest is kept in mind and there is a logic and there is certain rationale behind it which we can communicate, um, it is important. So decisiveness doesn't mean that it is total insensitivity to the people around. So what is being deliberative? And I want to spend some time while we talked about decisive leadership. The deliberative leadership says that while there is a high of decision making in a decisive form, this is slowed down by the deliberative approach. And it is also to make sure what is the acceptable rate of failure and the rate of reckless mistakes. So decisiveness might lead to reckless mistakes. And if those volumes are much higher, then whatever good that might have come up, it can actually, and there are political situations, there are political examples in front of us, there are social examples where we've seen this, that quick decisions, multiple decisions taken fast, more sometimes to show the decisiveness, have resulted in a lot of other fallouts as well. So, some aspects of deliberative leadership. So, there is only one goal of deliberation, which is to find the best answer. And if you compare it with decisive leadership, it was about get into action. Where here, it is not about getting into action quickly. It is about collaborate, involve others, and also wait for the right strategy. So, in one sense, it might seem the opposite of what decisive leadership is all about, and it is there on a continuum. Where it becomes most effective is when time is not a challenge, and that is not really the case, because we saw that right up front, that there was a business reality where each one of us has to do bigger, better, faster, and more with less and less. So time is everywhere a resource which is less for us. But when we have too many choices, it is better to deliberate. It is better to actually look at some of the data points that we have. The flip side of this is that people can use it as a stalling tactic, and people do use it as a stalling tactic. And many times we see that that dream of becoming perfection, and we've had this thing. We tell people stop being a perfectionist. So some of your friend circle, your colleagues, whom you go out to and ask them for their help, and you could always be from these two categories, or you do these two areas of decision making. It could be either a decisive or it could be deliberative. Are you a decisive or a deliberate? So you could actually use the chat and give me this quick one. You decisive or a deliberate one? Yeah. So, and let's also see how many of are decisive and how many of are deliberate. Okay. Yes, I get one decisive. Ritaksha, thanks. All right. So everybody is decisive. So by the way, in the being deliberate is not bad. Okay. So we have Surajit who's deliberate, mix of both. All right. Okay. Peace is important than perfection. And Sachin, yeah. So I think it is each to their own based on the situation. Yep. It is. So it is a trick question, right? We must be both, like you all said. But some of us, we all tend to both, right? But we tend to show a tendency towards one or the other. Whether you and I like it or not, whether we accept it or not, we tend to show one over the other. Okay? We tend to lean towards one. And I like Mayank's response. He says, I am deliberate generally, but if it delays, then I become decisive. And I think that's a default approach. Balance is difficult to get, but balance is the key, mostly direct also. So this is also for us to reflect, where do we lean more towards? It is nice to say that we must be both, but where do you lean? Fast decisions or best decisions? Critical element here is sometimes you become decisive and unafraid. Sometimes you have to contemplate and deliberate. But objective ultimately is to move forward. Best decisions given scenario. And I think that came in one of the comments earlier on. It is about making decisions. It is about making it work for all of us. You can't be both simultaneously, but you can actually choose to play depending on the situation. And Pankaj, I get your point on that. So some of the behaviors, and we're coming towards the end, I'm going to leave you with some self-check points for you to look at. Timeliness. So do you make timely decisions? Is this that you're always catching up, or somebody is always asking you for things, or you're taking a while to close things? That is the first element to look at. timeliness. The other is also how much of research and evaluation do you do, and again, what is the data threshold that you have, and are you doing enough or more of it, or are you doing less or more of it? That will give some idea of where we are. Um, where is that big alignment? What is that big picture? If the big picture, like in the current case, is, I mean, for United States of America, the big picture at one point in time was let's go and get economy rolling. And if that is important for us today, then we are actually going to be opening up and approaching the whole menace in a different manner. If the big picture and the alignment at that particular point in time is that we need to start with looking at this one big element of saving lives first and getting the basic house in order, then we move around that. Uh, it's important to get people together. Are we involving others? Are we bouncing off ideas? And that helps build this capability of making good decisions, making strong decisions, and also getting people to buy in. I think that whole bicycle story. Do you get going? Do you give directions? Sometimes I can't make the decisions, but what I can definitely do is I can either escalate or direct it to somebody who can help if it is out of my jurisdiction. So are we getting to the action? That is also important, but also on what elements is where we should start using the bicycle principle and owning the consequences. So there are multiple elements on decisive leadership. Not by itself, everything is not correct, but there is a mix that works really well. So some of the things that we spoke about, and we just about come to about the last part of the webinar, it's about choices. Decision making or decisive leadership is about making those choices and making them quickly or making them in an appropriate time, if I may use that phrase that is more relevant here. It is not about good, better, or best. Again, that is critical. At times, even good or semi-good or uncertain also serves the purpose. And always striving for the best in every situation is not the real deal. I mean, it can create problems. Decisive leadership by itself might not be the only solution. Given the current scenario that we live in, the world doesn't work in black and white. So in every situation, we can't be just running around with things. There are steps that are there. Have a very clear idea of what we want to do. Look at the intent, the big picture, big view, and there's always that one focus. There is always that one, machli ki aankh, as we call it, or the eye of the fish which is there, and then we make choices and just get going using that bicycle principle. Mind will play game. There are times when we have to talk to our mind and also stop it as well. But be aware that, do I know too much, which is creating problem, or do I know too little? And this skill that I was talking to about, the great skill that all of us have, an advanced level of procrastination, and one needs to be wary of that and ensure that these mind, knowledge, and skills are attacked in the right manner, where the bubble is made to work for us rather than working against us. Also, we looked at the 5 areas which I want to leave you with. Having that capability to reflect in an urgency, with an urgent focus on the near term and medium term and long term areas. How much information or data should we be looking for? Would we always go for 70%, or would we always go for 50% or 60%? So decide on your own data threshold, which one, on what will be most effective. The world is uncertain. It will continue to remain uncertain. The outcomes will remain uncertain because there's too much happening. Many of you would have planned for vacations and holidays during this period. As we talk today on 14th of May, you would have probably been leaving for somewhere. But remember, it is uncertainty which is making us come together and talk right now. Buy-in, the more we have a buy-in, the more we have stakeholders, the easier it is to get an overall perspective. And there is no wrong decision. There's no wrong or right decision. If it turns out to be wrong later on, it can always be corrected. Okay, outcome is the prime orientation, as Pankaj says. Outcome orientation is extremely important, but not at the cost of being too fast or being too slow. Do we want type? And I leave you with this thought: do you want fast decisions or the best decisions? Decisive leadership or deliberate leadership? I think the answer lies somewhere in middle. It is pretty much like that situation flexing or leadership styles flexing that we are talking of right now. Uh, so we talked about these four areas. The whole journey, if you look at in this picture and you start from extreme left, uh, we might start with one style of operations. Either it could be decisive or deliberative. It could be a collaborative or influential or directive, but you start in a certain manner. But unless we evolve and we keep ourselves open to changing and make those allowances for us to try new things, the outcomes would be very similar to what we've been getting, and there'll be very limited progress that we will make. The choice is entirely with you, and I wish you all the very best to be able to strike this chord. So stay safe and take care. Aggie, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Ashish. And I think it was a wonderful session. And we leave the floor open for all of you to ask a question. So before everyone asks, I just wanted to kind of ask a question, Ashish. You spoke about leadership, decisive leadership. In fact, I was referring to one of the research reports which says courage is seen also as one of the important skills in the decision-making ability. And I remember in one of the old videos of our ex-president, APJ Abdul Kalam, where he spoke about experience when you're taking decisions. So could you just throw a little light on courage and experience? How does it intertwine in the decision-making process?
So I did mention about courage somewhere, I think, and that's what is expected out of us as leaders. And why courage? And why does courage become such a big deal? If you already know what the outcome is likely to be, it doesn't require any big challenge. Even a child can do that. So for anything which is a very predictable outcome, uh, it is very easy. So anybody can do that. But as a leader, it is important to demonstrate that courage of making the choices basis whatever limited information that we have. And then also to own the outcomes and to own what is likely to flow out of it. Be able to then accept, put your hands up, be also able to try out new things and be open to that. So I guess courage is an important element, and also courage demonstrates that to the team that you are actually willing to put your neck out for them, and I think that's also very important. Armed forces are full of such examples. I think that's what it goes. I forget the second part, Aggie. You were asking of.
Yeah, I spoke about experience because I also see that when you're taking decisions, especially courageous one, bold ones, the experience element plays a lot of part. And just I wanted to understand, when you talk about experiences, what do you really look at it in terms of that?
Yeah. So experience. Yes. So I think the experiences are the key. Experience, and there were times when experience used to be built over it used to take many years for people to build experience. Today we have others' experience to read and learn from, to also get to form our own combination and permutations. In the same situation, how you handle it is basis your own experience and how you have been through that, which gives you experience give you clarity of mind. I think, and that's one of the biggest things that happens in being decisive. Experience also gives you a broad idea of what percentage you can expect in terms of being successful. So if sometimes you feel that, okay, I think 60% will happen and rest 20 I can handle. And that's where experience comes in handy as well.
So we have, I think Denzel has put up a point there. I was saying that it's important to get a buy-in, he feels. So I don't remember you spoke about the buying part, and you spoke about an organization where decision making has been to the last of the hierarchy in that process. So just give us a little perspective. You're saying that we shouldn't be taking perspective from everyone, or you think only the top hierarchy should decide in decision making?
So I think number one, as I talk about decisive leadership or deliberate or leadership in any sense, it is to me it is to in my mind it is independent of hierarchy. It is about us as an individual. So wherever I am operating, it could be with my peers, it could be people who report into me, it could be people who are senior to me, um, and I can and we can actually go on and say what gives you that authority to have be decisive. So there are people around us who are the stakeholders, and we call them stakeholders because each one of them has some interests in what we are taking a decision for. So their perspectives are always important and always welcome. They might or might not agree with you, and I think to Denzel's point, it is very likely that they don't agree with us on something. Um, so I, there are a few things, a few ways in which it works. If we have a rationale to it, we share the rationale. Okay, and let's also accept this. Not every team member jumps in with the same amount of enthusiasm and passion as you would, right? Or even in their own way, they would have their own interpretations. But if you have majority of your team with you, then it makes good sense to move on as long as the decisions are in the right direction, they create action, and they also are for long-term benefit, medium to long-term benefit, and with immediate results also on some areas. So I think all those needs to be taken care of. But I am totally in agreement with Denzel that there will be challenges at times where you have to tell people uh, because you can't share many details. They'll have to you have to accept what you are saying. But if everybody is opposing my decision, then I need to introspect and say, well, am I being too autocratic? Am I being too decisive,
Yeah,
or am I being a pain?
your leadership style, your credibility will matter a lot in this kind of
Yeah.
situation. I think, yeah, I'm sure a lot of us will have a question. Members have question, please ask your questions, and I think Ashish can respond to them if at all you have any questions. Uh, Once again, Ashish, thanks. It was a wonderful session, I must say. And in fact, I like to go back to what somebody had asked about salary cut. I spoke to many HR heads in the last 3 4 days, and one of the only engaging topic in that was either a manpower cut or salary cut, which is happening, and it's a very tough decisions to take. And there are leaders who are shying away to take those decisions because how do you communicate? Your credibility is getting a hit because it's a very emotional decision. So, it's very challenging for leaders today to really manage in this current context. So, you think being honest about, upfront about some conversations will also be good enough to, or without impacting your credibility?
Yeah, so we are also looking at another side of it now. So otherwise, if you're looking at a decisive leadership is or a deliberate leadership, it's about how do you decide, how do you make decisions, right? Some is on almost on minimal information with you, and the other end of it is thoroughness. Now we are now taking this decision
Hmm.
to the next level on how do we communicate,
Yeah.
how do we tell people about it. Yes. So there are many ways of doing that. I mean, obviously the first one is that channels that we talk of. I think everybody, quite a few of us are very seasoned professionals out there on the call. um, and and you would know that one of the things that works really well is if your intent is honest, and if people see that intent that you've done. Also being transparent helps. Again, some people might turn around and say we can't be telling everything to them, but sure, we can tell something. We can tell some relevant things. And the business world that we live in, even if you don't tell them, they'll still find out. And
Yes.
what hurts the most is when you hear it from someone else and
Yeah.
not from the horse's mouth.
Yeah. There's one last question we'll take. I think this is very important because I think somewhere you spoke about leadership styles. So Sachin is asking a very pertinent question, saying, "Does micromanagement lead to being autocratic, and especially in a situation like today when your work from home is become a norm of the day, or it's going to be the norm of the day? I think in times to come also."
Yeah, so I think so. How I say this is work from home. I mean, so we already have at least one organization telling that their employees can work from home forever. So uh, the moment you start micromanaging, I think there's an underlying belief that I know more than you anyways. And when I go there, then I actually am telling you, listen, you have to do it my way because you have no clue of what you're doing.
Correct.
So it can border on to being autocratic, but
Yeah.
definitely it is. So which is not to say that micromanagement is a wrong way. In some cases, in some people, for some tasks, that is the most effective way, because it could be a new recruit or a new job or a new project, something that people haven't done, something which really involves a very high level of precision, and you are building your capabilities around it. But if that becomes a habit, and to the other point on work from home and micromanagement, I don't think micromanagement is possible working from home, because people very conveniently will not use the phone or not talk to you, and you can keep yourself shouting horse on that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think it's always good to be inclusive. Um, yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, it's also like one of the things that I'm seeing in terms of micromanagement also in today's time, especially in COVID situation. Empathy is coming across as one of the most important personality of leaders. I think people are able to understand the situation. They are in it. And I remember 10 years ago, if we were to do a webinar or a con call, we would put the speaker and everything on mute and we would keep roaming around. But today it's not the same. So empathy is one of the critical aspects of leadership that I'm seeing is emerging. And latest report of Egon Zender and Korn Ferry research reports are also indicating that with courage comes empathy. I think understanding and being sensitive is where critical to the leadership which is coming to the point. Great, Ashish. Thank you so much, and we'd like to thank all the participants.
I just want to take one more. I think Abhishek said something. And before I talk about Abhishek, yes, Sachin, the three ducks can't be in the same row. You hit a jackpot very rarely in life.
Yeah.
It happened to me once. I didn't believe myself till the time the check came in my hand. But Abhishek, to your point, I think why current situation? If anywhere there is a layoff, and you and I might have been a part of this. Either we were laid off at some point in time, or we asked people to go away. And those decisions, unless there is a personal grudge, they have some rationale behind it. The person who's being subjected to it always feels that you are being personal. For the receiver's end, there's lots of emotion in it. And from the leadership, the challenge actually as a leader is how do we demonstrate that there is both emotion and a logic to it. Let's face this, and I'm not being insensitive towards what happens to people. The if you don't make money, you can't give money. But how to choose who will you not give money is a decision where everybody, I think every organization, every leadership group, every professional setup tries to make it as organized and as logical as possible. And it's always with a heavy heart that you actually pass on the message. Some of us might not be able to do it that well. And like I said, things can be different for different people. So it's a difficulty. Yes, we might not get the same pool of talent later on, but that's a choice which people make today. That's a decision made. Abhishek, to your point, if we are asking people to go today, we might not get them tomorrow. But who knows what tomorrow holds? Tomorrow, our requirements might be very different, and we might get the same people back with a different skill set. And remember, there's lots of thought going on repurposing today, repurposing the jobs, repurposing the products. How do you utilize whatever is available with you in the best possible manner?
And reskilling is also one of the prime agenda.
Correct.
Yeah? Great. So I think it's a great session. Thanks, Ashish, once again. Wonderful to hear. And I would like to thank all viewers or participants who have joined this webinar. We thank you. So on behalf of Procademy, I like to give you a big thumbs up for joining. And I'm sure it was a value-add session to all of you. I know it's a 1 hour, 20-minute session that has gone on, but thanks once again for patiently hearing. And we will put up this presentation for your review and for you to take some notes. At Procademy, we believe that leadership is all about conversation. Leadership is all about engagement. And that's what we are doing. So please keep on a lookout. We will be doing more of such series. And we do have a lot of articles and research articles that we put up. So do follow on our websites. I'm sure you will get a lot of insight onto us and also onto the topics that we discussed. So once again, thanks to every one of you. Thanks, Ashish. Wonderful session. And I'm sure it will be a great benefit to all of you all in times to come. All the best, and all the best for the post-COVID scenarios. And all of us can reach out to each other in case of any doubt or clarity. Thank you so much. Have a good rest of the day and good night. Thank you, Ashish. Thank you, everyone. We'll leave this session.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone.